of the house, today we're not only going to talk about the good idea of democracy in general, but we're also going to talk about China and how its government, its people, and its growing of the country requires democracy. We think that the sustainability of growth in its country and also its people is at stake here, and we think China needs to implement democracy to win the hearts and minds of its own people. Of course, this debate is going to be a value judgment debate about whether or not it's good for China. It's better off if China implements democracy in the very end. And the developing of democracy is, of course, not limited to some things, but it can be in the form of a lot of things, such as more media exposure or more freedom of speech, such as like public debates. Also, if it's possible and if it's really needed, more political parties in the government. All of this, and not limited to all of this, should happen, and China should expand it to democracy. I'm going to talk about two things basically. First of all, I'm going to talk about how China should complete this country, and second, I'm going to talk about why democracy is specifically very good for China to win the hearts of its people. Talk about China as a country. We think that the purpose of the country is to fulfill the needs of its people in the very beginning. Now, regarding to the period of Moscow, we think that China has fulfilled these basic needs of its people. We think China's economy is right now very, very stellar, and it still keep on growing. And it means that its people are now less starving, are more rich. And we think China has even grown to the extent of military expansion, which is how we've seen how such big expansion in military development of weapons is happening in China. We've seen how they have a very good international bargaining position, being the permanent member in the UNSC, for example, and how their international trade is very, very good. We've seen how education also expanded in China, how it's developed throughout the years, and its universities has been one of the best in Asia. Mr. Madam Speaker, we think China has a lot of wealthy entrepreneurs to secure its business. All of this China has, and it shows how China is very, very stellar as a country. Now, conclusion is, they're very much ready to go to the next step. And we think the next step that China should take is to go on and implement democracy, to open the chance for its people to actually get involved in all these growth, Mr. Speaker. For the people to have a really clear and bold say in China's future, in policy making, in its economy, and its exposure towards, and more exposure towards media as to what the people have to say. Yes.
But don't you think democracy is a means for the people to achieve an end, which is to cater the needs of the society to begin with?
Democracy is to cater the needs of society, yes. And that's why I'm going to explain how democracy will cater the needs to society in my argument. Okay, let's explain why democracy is good for China, for its society. Now, one of the issues of China's governance, besides of all these stellar growths, is that China has a fear for its own people. With the massive number of people that China possessed, also the massive amount of land China possessed, and also about the diverse culture that China also possessed. We're talking about Muslims in China, we're talking about Mongols in China, we're talking about Tibets in China. China has very much fear and always at edge with its own people, because they have the fear that the people will retaliate. Now, about this, with this huge number, once a retaliation and a protest start, the government might not be able to stop it. This is the fear of China. This is one of the key problems that the government of China has. Now, how have they been handling it so far? Not really good. We're not going to say that they're not handling very good. They have very, very restricting laws. No Twitter, no Facebook, no YouTube. They're very enclosing their society inside their own country, right? Also, very, very strict discipline about their laws. Just last time, I don't know when, security arrested 600 people after 2 Tibetans performed self-immolations as a sign of protest. Just performing a sign of protest, China has to arrest 600 people. Shows that China is very, very insecure regarding to its own people. Now, these kind of handlings about protests, about opinions from its people, it's very, very not good. Why? Because we think it actually causes the unwanted bad reaction that came from its own people. People start talking behind China's backs. We see how intelligent hackers from China or even students from China create their own social media or even break into the international media. You can open Twitter and Facebook in China and talk about how bad their country is and how very restricting and very disciplined their country is. Talking about these countries behind their backs. Also, it creates a lot of resentment from all parts of its own society. Not only small people who sometimes protest about the idea of one-child policy because they require more child in their life because they think that more child is better, but also from upper class society, young businessmen, young entrepreneurs who wishes to deliver their opinions, but it's very, very limited because the government is being very, very harsh. The point is, what China is doing retaliation from its own people, the very thing that China is afraid of. Now, because of all of this, why do we think democracy is better off for this? Because we think democracy provides transparency. There's a significant amount of truth and openness that democracy provides, and we think this is very good. Why? Because China doesn't always have to perform such disciplinaries on its people anymore. It can see what its people are concerned about. It can see on the newspapers, it can see on the media what its people is actually concerned about, and they don't have to kill its people or actually arrest its people for this. We think that China's own people is intelligent enough and ready enough to outvoice their cries, outvoice their opinions without having to do some harsh things. But now they are doing it because they think the government is not listening. The moment that the government opened itself to listen to its people's and its people's needs, people don't have to go to such extremes such as self-immolation and burning themselves to show protest to the government anymore. Now the people and the government can actually have an open talk as to what they are going to do with the country, and China doesn't have to be afraid of its people anymore in the very end. So this is the sense of the opening government. We think that China is much better off with democracy because democracy will win the hearts and minds of its people. We think its people are very much ready. We think as a country, China is very much ready. And instead of doing very disciplinary acts that will create retaliation and hatred from its own people, it's better off for China to open a chance to talk to its people, provide transparency and a significant amount of truth and communication between the government and its people so that they can build a stellar foundation and keep the growth that it's having right now. And by this, we open the debate. Thank you.